is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. Dan is off tonight. I'm John Roberts. President Clinton says U.S. law enforcement is taking what he calls extraordinary steps to guard against terrorism. His advice to you, keep your eyes open, report anything suspicious, but do not stay home and hide over the holidays. We'll hear more from the president in an exclusive interview shortly. But first, CBS's Jim Stewart is following the latest U.S. efforts to keep terror at bay.
If you're traveling over the holidays, get ready for the hassles of a heightened security alert. The FAA is warning flyers not to show up with Christmas gifts already wrapped because you just might have to unwrap them for inspection. It was only one of several warnings issued in Washington today. The State Department was especially worried about Americans overseas.
We have information about the possibility of terrorist attacks in different parts of the world.
While at the Justice Department, officials stopped short of saying don't go to large gatherings over the holidays, but they did urge everyone to keep an eye out.
Well, I'd ask people, I think, to be more cautious, to be more vigilant, to be more aware of your surroundings, to report any suspicious things to law enforcement authorities.
Meanwhile, in Seattle today, a federal grand jury indicted the young Algerian caught with a carload of explosives as he tried to enter the United States on a ferry from Canada. Ahmed Ressam was charged with 5 counts ranging from smuggling to making a false statement. Investigators believe Ressam had accomplices in the United States, but have not yet linked him to terrorist leader Osama bin Laden, who is believed to be behind the latest threats. Investigators insist, however, they have no information about specific targets either inside the U.S. or overseas.
We obviously are trying to strike an appropriate balance. We're trying to make sure that the American people, we share information with them to the extent that we possibly can.
And in return, the public is starting to share with law enforcement a lot of its suspicions. Investigators are already tracking down tips about strange cars, people acting strangely, and things that just look strange. Federal agents say they'll check them all out. Meanwhile, Mr. Ressam tonight has pleaded not guilty to all charges. John?
Jim Stewart in Washington, thanks. At the White House, President Clinton was asked today about the threat of terror in an exclusive interview with 60 Minutes 2 correspondent Charlie Rose.
Mr. President, because of the recent arrest and heightened security concerns at airports, do you expect, worry that there will be an incident of terrorism before the first of the year?
Well, we are on a heightened state of alert, and we're doing a lot of work on this. But I would say to the American people they should go on about their business and celebrate the holidays as they would. But they should be aware. You know, this whole millennial idea draws out a lot of people who are maybe by our standards deranged, and other people maybe want to use it for their own political ends. So if people see anything suspicious, they should report it to the authorities as quickly as possible. But otherwise, I should say they should go on about their business. We're working very, very hard on this.
The president talks more about U.S. national security and many other issues facing Americans in the 21st century on 60 Minutes 2 next Tuesday night here on CBS. U.S. officials are looking into the recent travels of a Canadian woman arrested Sunday evening at a border crossing in Vermont. She tried to enter the United States with an Algerian man. CBS's Thalia Ashuris is watching developments along America's suddenly tense northern border.
Claiming they were lost and with a doctored French passport, a woman from Montreal and an Algerian man had their apparent trip into the United States blocked. Lucia Garofalo and Bobi Chamchi were detained after this Vermont customs agent became suspicious and called in sniffer dogs. The canines detected what may have been traces of explosives. Officials were aware of Garofalo because of previous crossings and after she was observed by surveillance monitors at different border posts this month.
Form X-ray.
Safeguarding the U.S.-Canada boundary is also the job of almost 300 Border Patrol agents who rely heavily on high-tech surveillance.
How much do you think the technology has helped the Border Patrol do its job?
Oh, tremendously. I think it enhances our ability to cover more areas.
The command center of the agency's Swanton, Vermont unit monitors 261 miles of a rugged, remote frontier and is credited with making 45% of all arrests along the U.S.-Canada border.
Just back there is Canada. In remote areas like this, a video camera is trained on the road leading into the United States. As a vehicle drives by, it activates a sensor buried beneath the surface.
That sensor triggers another camera which pinpoints the car's license number.
This is our
This is our bread and butter right here.
Equipment includes magnetic, seismic, and infrared detectors, all of which are concealed.
Right here, and see this, it's buried in the ground right now. It's just going to let us know if vehicles are coming through this area.
The Border Patrol has increased its efforts 20% so far and will double that percentage at least through the Millennium celebrations. After that, the level will be taken back down to normal. That is, if all else remains normal. Tanya Shuras, CBS News, Swanton, Vermont.
Huge public New Year's Eve celebrations are planned in Washington, D.C. and in New York City. They're expected to attract millions of people. CBS News correspondent Eric Engberg reports on what's being done to protect them.
The countdown has begun for local and federal law enforcement organizations worried that New Year's Eve might bring a terrorist attack, a Y2K techno calamity, or both. New Year's Eve means big defensive plans and big expenditures for police overtime. New York City will put 37,000 police, some working undercover, on the streets for its annual Times Square celebration. The vigilance level at places like the World Trade Center, once a terrorist target, will be high. At familiar Washington landmarks, where tighter security has been the rule since the Oklahoma City bombing, new precautions have been added. Yesterday, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was among those evacuated from his Pentagon office when a suspicious package was found. It turned out to be a false alarm. D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey, who knows that the federal monuments and offices make ideal symbolic targets for foreign terrorists, okayed $1 million in overtime.
We've canceled leave for all of our members, so all of our sworn and civilian members will be working over the holiday season.
The arrest near Seattle has triggered enough excess jumpiness that some authorities are now trying to dial back the tension level. New York's police commissioner said he and family will be in Times Square when the ball drops, despite warnings from outside experts. And terrorism analysts say there is danger in obsessing about threats.
Ironically, if people get too afraid and don't continue to do what they are planned to do, go to special events, the terrorist need not even detonate a bomb. He's won already.
Despite all the talk of terrorist threats at millennial events, like the one that will be held here at the Lincoln Memorial, police say the biggest threat to celebrants that night will likely be an old-fashioned one: drunk drivers, who they are also gearing up to stop. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Washington.
Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, a Hubble house call 380 miles up to fix the space telescope. An experimental new asthma drug without the side effects of current treatments. And a story of life after death, a resurrection of the spirit.
All right, guys.